well, to humor me, basically. 44 years, here's 1967. It's pointing at today, remember. 22 years, 11 years, 5 years. Now let's stop it and look at it for a minute so we can see how we're doing.
This is the last 5 years.
Well, it's not so much the last 5 years, it's pointing at today. That's today. And what we've got is 2 years, 9 months, and 16 days on the screen. Okay, well, what's it saying here? It predicted a high novelty maxima here, 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 and then here, which we haven't gotten to yet. But we've been through all of this, so let's see how we're doing. Okay, to the day, this high novelty maxima corresponds to the business in Tiananmen Square, not the massacre, which is slightly off the trough and up on this side, but the day they put 1 million people into the square peaceably is right at the bottom of that thing. Well, okay, so then we know that that ended unhappily. There was a reassertion of traditional patterns, i.e. shooting students. What could be more traditional than that? So there was a lot of that. And then that sort of peaked out. And then there was another try at a novel maxima. And at the bottom of this one, the Berlin Wall is torn down, right at the bottom of this one. So there's 2 hits in a row. Now, you remember that after the Berlin Wall was torn down, there were a series of revolutions. Czechoslovakia, Poland, Bulgaria, and then finally Romania going over the top, and that they became progressively uglier, progressively more in the traditional mold, meaning costing more life, and that week between Christmas and New Year's of last year, when the footage was coming in from the radio station in Romania, it was fairly grim. Well, that was as we went over the peak of this anti-novel or habitual thing. Then we started a long, slow meander downward, which was fairly gradual, and a lot of stuff, seemed fairly irrelevant to us. It was all about the new German order and the SNL scandal. But then we got to the bottom of this. It's not quite as deep as this, but we reached it on the 3rd of August. We reached it when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. Now let me see if I know what I'm talking about. Let's see if I can move this arrow a little. Yes, there's the 27th of July. At that point, they're massed on the border and so forth. And then the invasion takes place just a few days later. Well, what can we say about the prognosis for the future based on what we're looking at?
This concludes Side A.
Well, number one, I think probably everyone would be advised to stay fairly liquid in their portfolios because this crisis is being very carefully managed, but only up to a point. And at that point, it goes over the lip. And this, the Tiananmen Square massacre point, is the previously most novel point ever tested in the history of, the cosmos. So at some point late December or early next January, we're going to push through that, having been on this long slide down. So now, So it's not a very good prognosis unless you're in the novelty business. In terms of an absolute prediction, what this is saying is that the big change to watch for is around the 20th of November. The elections will be over the week between the end of the, and you can feel the momentum, the inevitability of it. I mean, they'll be very hard-pressed to hold it together till then. If we focus in there, let's take a look at that. See how it ripples? See how at the end it begins to come apart? You can't even tell where the top of the peak is, because obviously they just get it all piled up, these shitloads and shitloads of bombs and gas and all this stuff. And then it rattles out of their control, and then there's a bifurcation, a phase split, and down she comes.
That's when, November 20th?
Yeah, November 20th. So then I thought that this was pretty interesting. So then I want to show you something else. I want to completely change our target date and everything. Let's use the command C. Yes. Okay. What we're looking at now is 200 years. And these 200 years are from 499 AD until 699 AD. Now, why are we looking at these years? Do you remember how in what we were just looking at, I said that we came down, that I said that the Berlin Wall was here, the Romanian Revolution was here, then the SNL crisis and all that, then Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait here at the bottom of this, and that I expected war to break out at the top of this. Now we're looking at the historical resonance of what we were just looking at before. We're looking at a much larger span of time, and what I want to show you is that when we put it close to where Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, that's where he invaded Kuwait, it tells us that the resonant date is 579. The date for the birth of Muhammad is 571. So when you move it to 571, it's only off by that much. So what this means is that this situation in the Middle East, we have chosen to confront this guy at a period when the resonance which backs up what he is doing is the resonance of the birth and career of the Prophet himself. Now, when you move it over to the date, the resonance which corresponds with the 25th of November, it's 599. The Hijra was in 622 down there, and then Muhammad didn't live much longer after that. But the gains of Islam were all put in place. I mean, this is the great gradient along which Islam made its major territorial and ideological claims over the last millennium. What does this correspond to in terms of next year? It corresponds to the 30th of March. The 30th of March corresponds to the Hijra and the subsequent death of Muhammad. So what it means is that, you know, in the way that history is both a plotted and unconscious process, we have managed to stumble into a situation where we will probably be sacrificed to the engine of historical inevitability. It's no moment to confront Islam. I think probably Allah will be very merciful to the armies of the Caliph. But, you know, then there's a faction which is saying, oh, well, so is this the end of the world, and is this Armageddon, and yak, yak. No, of course not. All this is practically a memory by 1996 or 7, when whole other problems loom. I mean, no, it's just some kind of crazy military adventure cloaked in the form of a World War II and a half or something. There will be a lot of this stuff, if this wave is correct, as we move toward the millennium and beyond it. Because you see, what's happening is all these historical